families seem to get it all done in the end anyway, but we're talking about parenting children. And last week we started focusing on discipline, and we talked about how there's the kind of positive side to it, but there's also a negative side. So we were concentrating mostly on the positive side of it. But we talked about a definition of discipline, and that had not only to equal punishment, and that's a large part of how we look at it today. Kind of, or when you think about, well, that kid needs discipline, we're kind of thinking about punishment, but that's not really all that is entailed with discipline. It comes from the word disciple, talking about a student, a learner, a follower. That kind of gives the idea that if you're going to learn, you've got to learn from somebody. You need a mentor. You need somebody to guide you. The purposes of discipline: inner growth, personal responsibility, teaching our kids that, and also teaching them self-control. So, the true biblical meaning of discipline is heart training. Talked about in Proverbs how Solomon handed down that wisdom, that foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. And really it's kind of our jobs as parents to go ahead and get that removed from them. Proverbs 29:15, a rod and a reprimand impart wisdom, but a child left undisciplined disgraces its mother. The other New King James Version, I think, was a good translation of that, where it says a child left to himself. You can think of that as left to their own devices. That's not a good thing. We as parents have to guide them. We have to bring them along and train them. So we stopped last week, and again we're talking about positive affirmation about with our kids, and that being part of the discipline. It's not always just the punishment, it's also the positive things that we have to impart. So we're talking about dialogue questions, and these are just questions that you go in and talk with the child. This is kind of similar to what we talked about, a pre-activity thing, about talking about, okay, Mr. Johnson's coming over today. What would be a good way to show respect to Mr. Johnson when he comes to our home? They're similar to that. But who could tell me the rules for we're in the store? What would be the proper way to act at the Anderson's house today? It's just a kind of setting the table as you go in before and what you're expecting from the child. The nice thing about this is you're asking these from the kids, and it's a dialogue question. It's interaction. Forces the kid to think about it, and it also forces them to verbalize it. And so that helps them with their memory on how they're supposed to conduct themselves. And kids like to receive praise for right answers. I mean, that's a positive reinforcement. When the kid gets the answer right, that's always a good thing. So, positive words. Parents often spend more energy suppressing bad behavior than elevating the good behavior. And that's an easy thing to do in our routine daily lives, because you're always trying to correct the things that have gone wrong. A lot of times when things are going well, we kind of just, okay, that's how things should be. We've got time to focus on other things. But really, you should be taking the time to focus on when your kid is doing the right things, and make sure you express that. Give that positive equal time as we do the negative. And the way that we can do this is even with the words that we're using. Just the phrases, don't get out of bed, if it's nap time, Instead, obey mommy and stay in bed. Do the positive twist on that. Don't be so messy versus be responsible and leave it clean for others. Or, in regards to your bedroom, don't make mom have to pick up for you. Let's do this ourselves. You're big enough to do this. Don't talk so much versus you need to become a better listener. People like that. It's how we converse with people. You need to listen to. So these are all good things that we can do, but instead of using the negative all the time, make sure we're using the positive connotation of that. All right. The thing about it, trying to use this, I used to, as I was growing up and first doing the parenting thing, I'd hear like that, well, you need to be positive with the kids. You need to be positive. And that's, my thought of it was, well, that's hard when they're driving me crazy. But the other part was, well, kids, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, The kids need to learn to take discipline and all that. Probably overdid it on that. There's plenty of justifiable don'ts in life that your kid's going to receive. It doesn't hurt to give them positive feedback, give them positive instruction. Okay, post-activity encouragement. It's a good time to let the kid know how they're doing, okay? think about it in your terms. Would you be happy in a job where your boss, you've been there 5 years and they never gave you any kind of a progress report on how you're doing? Never give you feedback as far as that, what kind of job you're doing. That's the same with the kids. They like to know, how things are going. It's good to do it when we talk about post-activity. It's right after it's happened. And the reason why that's a good thing is because kids are kind of like goldfish. I think that's the stereotypical goldfish don't remember things after 4 seconds or something. I think they've done studies on that. The kids are kind of like that too. And that goes both ways with the discipline. If you're coming down on them negatively, you want to get right after it happened too. But with positives, keep it fresh in their mind, that, hey, that was a good thing. I saw what you did there. Good on you. Reinforce the good behavior after the fact. Things that you can say. Your behavior in the store today was what I expected from you. I can tell you're listening, learning, and obeying. Okay, so that's a good praise for the kid. You were very respectful to the teacher today. I know you might have been tempted to spout off, but you responded the way God tells us to. Okay. There's a questionnaire I had, and we've alluded to it a few times here in the class, but one of the questions I had was, how did you make the kids so helpful when you had people over for meals? And that just took a lot of training and coercion. No. Kids like to help, for the most part. When we had kids over, we started very early with age-appropriate tasks, let them know, here's the standard. People are coming over today. We're going to serve them. We're going to make sure that we're being good hosts. But the appropriate tasks we would think of would be, okay, you're old enough now to, if we're not going to let you carry the dishes, you can carry silverware. Silverware doesn't break so much when you drop it, things like that. So go ahead and you set the table. I'll take care of the plates. You bring silverware. Let's go. So you graduate from that as age appropriate, but when you start young, it's always just kind of the standard. It's always what you do. You remind them that God is watching us. You also remind them that others are watching you. That's always, I think, a good thing growing up, is that kids need to know that their good behavior is appreciated by other people. They might not always get that verbalized to them from other people. Some old folks are really good about that. They'll stop a kid and say, oh, it's good to talk to you today. And, sometimes we tried to make sure our kids weren't always there just kind of grifting for gum or candy or anything, but actually go talk to people. But they actually got some good reinforcement from that. Other people saying, hey, watch what you're doing. You did well. You guys did a good thing with clearing the table tonight. You served others. So after, again, post-activity, sit down. Okay, we had a real good time tonight. I think the guests liked it. Nobody choked on the food. So, hey, it's a win for us. Good go. You made us proud by representing the family in a positive way. That's another thing that needs to be communicated to the kid, that, you're not over in this little world all by yourself, unto yourself. You're representing the family when things are going on. Okay. Affirmation, this kind of goes along with post-activity. It's just the verbalization of the affirmation for little things and the big things that you see with the kids are doing. Don't fail to recognize the small things. You have a kid that's going through the parking lot, picks up a piece of paper, throws it in the trash can. Praise that. Just the little things they're doing. Don't qualify your encouragement. Okay, things that we're talking about. This is nice try with the cookies. They only taste a little bit burnt. Good job on the lawn. It almost looks like your brother did it. Okay. Don't qualify. Just say, hey, good job. Affirmation by touch, an actual pat on the back. We've talked about this before in the class, but an actual pat on the back is huge. It is good for bonding, but it just accentuates the message too when you're saying, hey, good job with what you did. Okay, so that kind of goes through with what we were talking about with positive reinforcement. We talked about verbal encouragement. The praise has to do with character building. Goal incentives. This was more, you save up your allowance, you do good job on your grades or whatever. Things that are appropriate for showing them that they can attain things that they would like, whether that's allowance. That's probably the biggest one that we deal with, as the kids get older. Okay, yeah, we expect you to help around the house, but I know there's some things that you want to purchase as you get older and such like that. So we're going to kind of treat this maybe as your first job. You don't have to. I think it's fine for a family to just say, okay, we expect you to do this level of work around here just because everybody in the family is pitching in. What my parents used to do was, okay, we expect you to clean the room, do the dishes, whatever. If you want to go out there and prune all the hedges, then maybe we'll step it up a bit. If you want to detail mom's car, that's worth, $10 to your mom, that kind of thing. So you just gauge that through what you think is appropriate. Talked about the pre-activity encouragement, the post-activity encouragement, the dialogue questions, and the affirmation. So that's kind of a quick review of the positive side we're doing. Any comments on the positive side, because it's going to get dark here real quick. We're going to go to the negative side. I'd just say whenever you can, again, it's appropriate things to do for when the kid is excelling and doing something over and above what they would be expected to do. It's a good thing. Okay, so the flip side to everything always comes around. Oh, I did want to refer to these. 1 Peter 1, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness and into his marvelous light. This idea of telling the kid, the reason we're trying to build character, the reason we're enforcing positive things is, yeah, you're called out. You're called out to be, by God, to be separate people, separate from the world. This is especially good when kids a lot of the times will maybe not see the benefit of why they have to be different than the other kids. Well, Susie and Johnny get to stay up till 12. They eat all the candy they want, all these things. There's time to say, well, that's fine, but you're different. Number one, you're with our family, but number two, we're called by God, and we're going to do the things that benefit us towards that end. So the first principle, being different, being called out, expected to be excelling from just the normal of what society might want. The second principle is in 2 Peter, verse 1, and this is kind of the stair-stepping of these virtues that we're adding, these things that attain to growth as you achieve them. For this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, and virtue with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with steadfastness, and steadfastness with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. Okay, so this idea of adding to your character as you go, that's good. These are kind of building blocks, and you just keep going on. But why do we do that? It's verse 8 there. For if these qualities are yours and are increasing, they keep you from being ineffective or unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. So I think it's okay to point out to the kids that, no, we expect more from you, and this is why. Okay, so kind of going to the side that we don't like to tackle maybe some of the time. What do you do when the train goes off the tracks? Correction and punishment are only a part of the discipline process. It's one more arrow in your quiver in bringing your kid, but it's essential. Sometimes it's not so pleasant to be the parent, and you've got to be okay with that. A lot of times, I think in society, a lot of parents kind of get hung up on, oh, I want to be my kid's friend, or I don't want to be the heavy all the time. That can lead to some bad things. We'll talk about definition of punishment. It's fitting retribution for an offense. Okay. A correction is an act of bringing back from error or unacceptable deviation from a standard, what should have been going on. All punishment is to correct, but not all correction is punishment. So we just talked about the positive side. So it's not always going to be this, but it does serve a component. When you think about punishment, it's a lot of times it kind of has a negative aspect to it, but it communicates to children a value of good and evil. Okay, there is something that's happened. In all our societies, we see that as one of the cornerstones basically is if you cross the line, do damage to other people, you have to make it right, whether that be restore them for their property, or perhaps you've done such a heinous crime that we're going to stick you in prison for a while. It imparts to them a moral compass in the idea of the severity of infractions. Okay, no, it's not okay that you just hit Billy with the bat. It's not just a goof up. It's not, something that is going to be ignored. It's something that you're going to have to pay for. There's got to be some kind of restitution. Punishment should be linked to the proper administrator or authority. So it's good for the parents to be directly involved in this. I have seen sometimes, especially with people that have large families, God bless them, because they're, I know a family that they not only had their own 2 daughters, but then they fostered kids and troubled kids, and it was really a hard situation for them. But I mean, we're talking 9 kids. That to me is just unfathomable, but they made it work, but a lot of that had to go with a lot of structure. But part of that structure was, the girl was my age and around high school. A lot of that structure was, it seemed to me, was kind of delegating her as the authority for the younger kids. And that's not, sometimes that has to be done. And that's a thing you can do, is just say, okay, yeah, we're going to the store, your dad and I have to go pick out things. Your older sister's in charge. You guys, too much of that though can be hard on their relationships, but also hard on the oldest kid who's supposed to, be handing down the authority and things like that. I think it's better if you can tie it to the parents most of the time. Okay, a governing principle as far as punishment and consequences. Types of correction depends on the presence or absence of evil motives, or maybe we think bad intent. And the 2 crosswise arrows on the axis there, we've got punishment and then we've got consequences. We talked earlier about one of the earlier classes, the example I think was the kid with the spray gun. They're going to do goofy things, they're going to have bad things happen, but sometimes the consequences of the poor choice they've made are a punishment enough. But they're not going to tick to that until they get older in life. They're not going to see the reasonality in that. So what we've got on here is arrow for consequence coming up, and it rises as they get older. So we start off at birth, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. When they're getting to their tween years or their teens, you should be more on the consequence side of everything than so much the punishment. And the punishment is going to be very heavy as they're younger, because you're doing more correction, you're making sure that you're training them heavily at that point. These are going to come and intersect and then start going to go their separate ways. To where they're older, hopefully by that time the consequences of what their poor decisions are more of what the learning is done by, as opposed to the punishment, you having to tell them what to do all the time. Hopefully by the time they're older and they're getting up in their teen years, they know the routines, and you shouldn't have to be constantly telling them what to do. Another thing about that in consequences and punishment is what they're doing. Is it accidental or is it intentional? Bad decisions or accidents, usually consequences are going to rule the day as far as what they have to contend with. If you get into an intentional moral violation affecting other people, that's going to require punishment. Think of it as malice aforethought. I don't know if anybody recognizes this guy, Snidely Whiplash. Was he? I think it was one of the like Rocky and Bullwinkle, or this is your typical evil guy. He's wearing the black hat, he's got the nasty mustache, and that's what we're talking about here. Is willful defiance or disobedience is what the Bible calls foolishness or folly. So when it says folly is bound up in the heart of the child, this is what we're talking about: willful disobedience. Along with that, it could be deception, trickery, rebellion, lacking in wisdom is another word that's attached to that. We're talking about it biblically. Okay, kids are going to make mistakes. So that's kind of the difference here when we're talking about something that's, requiring a just, fair, and quick and appropriate level of punishment. Is it something from malice? Is it something they're doing to either out of spite, hate for other people? Are they trying to gain an unfair advantage and cheat people? Are they doing damage to others? As opposed to, making mistakes, dumb things that kids do just because that's what they do. Remember, correction doesn't necessarily equal punishment. So I think we could say the punishment aspect really goes toward trying to bring their character back from this malice type of thing, as opposed to the kids just making mistakes. Second principle, the blank should fit the blank. Yeah. Punishment should fit the crime, right? Punishments are a value statement. So punishment for a kid doing some minor infraction, even if it is willful, disobedient, spiteful of others, there are graduated steps. This is not so much like God and sin. God sees sin, and it's, once you've sinned a little bit, you've sinned the whole way. You've broken the law, you're guilty of it all. That's a little bit different than what we're talking about here, because with a kid, if he comes up and takes Johnny's toy or doesn't want to share and is acting that way, punishment is going to be different than if he hauls off and socks Johnny in the face. Things need to be a little bit graduated and appropriate to the level of the punishment fitting the crime. Children's sense of justice is established through punishment and not reward. That's something that I think is important to teach the kid, that we've got to treat other people the right way. There are things such as societal standards that need to be adhered to. They're going to see that more from a punishment aspect than they ever are rewards. The other thing about that is, again, are we trying to teach the kids that they're always going to get a reward for doing the right thing? When we start talking about justice, that has to do with treating our fellow man fairly and equally. Is that something that really, we're trying to say, you really deserve a reward for that. We're going to give you a ribbon for, treating your neighbor like you should. Not so much. Punishment is going to be the result that brings this idea of justice. Correcting childish behavior. Okay, the little things they do. I don't know if you can see the warning sign there. Ventilation hazard, do not inhale marbles. Okay. You actually have to have a label on that for kids if they can read, because they will inhale marbles. But begin with admonishment. Admonishment means to put into one's mind, to warn. Okay, so with kids and the things that they do with their childish behavior, again, we talked about our positive reinforcement being something that we're warning them about. But these warnings inform them that the actions or lack of action they're displaying is unwise, potentially harmful to themselves or to others. I'd like to talk a little bit about childish actions as opposed to foolish actions or attitudes. One way the person that did the study was doing it was saying that actions kind of show the childish part of a kid more than attitude does. So we're going to go through some of these things, and you just kind of answer with where you think it's going to be, whether that's a childish thing or if it's a foolish thing or willful disobedience. Leaving a bike in the driveway. Childish thing. Why is that? Okay. Yeah, there's a couple of principles there. One is, as she said, they don't know the value of the material thing. They don't really get in their mind what it costs to buy a bike. What's the other thing? Or a few other things, maybe. Always in a hurry. They're on to the next thing, aren't they? And, it's... Yeah, it's the goldfish principle. Hey, I've got stuff to do. Throw that on. I'm off to the backyard doing whatever we're doing,
Well, it's also, I mean, kind of hear it's home. It's not like I left it down the street.
Okay.
I got it close.
Okay. Okay. What he said was the kid saying, I got it close. It's at least at home. It's not down at Johnny's place or whatever. Yeah, and that's part of it. The kid might be thinking, yeah, I'm taking care of it. It's here. It's in the driveway. Well, no, it's in the driveway where I might back over it with the car, right? Hitting little brother with a bat. Okay. I think we're kind of gone away from the childish acts, and then that's not meaning they're playing baseball and overswings or the one's too dumb to stand back when he's swinging, It's actually maliciously hit, a forethought going after your brother with a bat. Well, that's going to be the foolishness. Knocking over a lamp. Okay. That could be anything. That could be anything from, like we said, growth spurts, where now my hand is this far from my arm, where it used to be this far. Oh, what did I do? Or it could be I'm running through the house. Could be a brother made me mad and I pushed him over and he went into the lamp. So yeah, that's might be a tweener. You have to kind of look at that one and see what happened. Get down to the putting oatmeal into the VCR. Hopefully if your kid's 8, he's not doing that. I'd say if your kid's 8 years old and doing that, that might be a little malicious type of thing. But kids being kids, I think it was a commercial I saw that, but it's like mom sitting there with the oatmeal. You like to have the oatmeal, so put it in your mouth, and the kid sees a VCR and he's shoving the oatmeal in. Calling sister names. That could be both. When kids are young and they're trying to express their frustration with others, yeah, that might be the way it comes out. But hopefully, as they get older, they know not to do that. They've had enough training; they know it's not the right way to treat people. Sawing off the head of sister's favorite Barbie. Okay, I'd say we're probably into the malicious side of their. Number one, where'd they get the saw? That's what I want to know. All right. Well, it's an important distinction when you talk about something that is childish versus childlike. And those two words, I think, get confused. I forget what I was listening to. I think somebody was talking about some political person who will remain nameless, talking about how that person was childish. And when you think about that, it's the little meltdowns that they have. It's the wanting to have their own way all the time. Myopic view of the universe. I'm at the center of it, and everybody is here to entertain or serve me. Okay. When you think about that, that's childish. But when you think about childlike, it's this sense of wonder of all the things that's around us. Little things that you don't give a second thought to, and the kid, it's like, whoa, just mind blown to them, They get to see the things in this world and admire the beauty. Hey, Dad, did you know that butterflies used to be caterpillars? Okay, it's another time to engage with positive reinforcement and talk with your kids about the wonder of life instead of saying, yeah, go watch a documentary, I'll tell you about it. Correction tools. Admonishment. Example, this is, again, talking about the things that will teach kids. This is the way you need to do it. A warning to pick up your toys. The related consequence. Okay, that's what we're talking about, and this can be natural or staged. It's been a while since I first taught this class, but I think it was a Corey Barton commercial, which I thought was just fantastic. But they're talking about we've got so much room in our new house that we have to have the industrial-sized vacuum cleaner, and the lady's like sitting on top of the thing, riding it around the house. But they come to this part, and she says, and the new mulching attachment really makes sure the kids pick up their toys. Okay, so the thought of it was, that's a natural consequence. Okay, and we've done that before with our kids too. Okay, we're going to be cleaning up the house. Anything that's out here is mine. Okay, that's pretty effective but you got to stick with it, and that's not to mean it's mine. It could be mine forever. I guess it depends on how serious you are about it. But that's what we used to do with the kids. Is gather up all their stuff that they left in. It's mine. You were told to pick it up. You had a half hour to pick it up. You didn't pick it up. There's the consequence. But what we found was through maybe part of our own indulgence of the kids, but also by the time you get grandparents in there and all of that, sometimes kids have so many toys, they don't really miss it, which is kind of a comment on our society, I guess. But you have to these natural consequences that they have, should be logical and related to the mistake. Okay. That goes along with your punishment too, being, you called your sister a dummy, you're grounded for eternity. It's not the way things go. Yeah.
I was told by one of my friends who she said what I do is she does that where she picks up all the toys if they don't pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
You have to earn them back.
Okay.
And what they don't earn back, if they don't notice it in a month, she goes and gives it to a secondhand store.
Donates it. Okay. The comment was that a friend of hers does that with the pickup and taking the toys away, but then they have to earn it back, which is a good thing also, I think. It teaches the kid that there's a consequence to your not only losing it, but there's also work you have to do to get that back. But if the kid didn't realize they were gone, then that stuff goes to the youth ranch maybe. So, it should also be, this consequence should be under the child's control. Don't make rules that are unrealistic for the child to follow. Should be fair, leave room for extraordinary conditions. Okay. And that's always one you have to kind of temper and really get down to the bottom of it. Yeah, I left my bike in the driveway because I had to go save Jimmy. I had to give him CPR. He was choking on, make sure you're getting down to what's true and what's not with that. Okay. Correction tool, some more. Talking about property. Having kids learn responsibility of being a good steward with their possessions helps make them responsible with the property of others. Okay, so if you're teaching them that it's a good thing to put the bike in out of the rain, that we want to, keep it in good mechanical condition. We don't want to drag it through the mud and leave it dirty. Things corrode, things get gross. If you're trying to foster in them an idea of keeping property well-maintained, reasonable amount, don't go over the top with it or anything, but that gives them value of other people's property. This is why you don't throw Jimmy's bike in the mud. This is why you don't do other things like that. As kids get older, related consequences should be given and not a lot of talking to explain it. In fact, too much talking can have an undesired effect. So what I mean by that is when you set the rule up and you say, okay, this is where we're going to be with this. Your bike needs to be out of the driveway. Your school books need to be put up and cleared off the table so your mom can set the dinner dishes or you can or whatever. When it gets down to the point of telling them, okay, that's not done, sometimes it's less effective to sit there and lecture them for 5 minutes about it than to just say, hey, that's not right. What do you need to do? Again, let them verbalize it, let them correct it, and go on. Maybe too much talking about it has an undesired effect. Another correction tool is withholding privileges. Okay. Requirements of responsible behavior are needed in order to participate in that privilege. Okay. You want to help grandma make cookies. Okay, well, that sounds like a great thing to do on a Saturday. That's a lot of fun. Let's make sure you get up an hour early and get your room cleaned before you go. And if it's not cleaned, you're not going. If instructions are not heeded, the privilege is taken away. So again, another kind of punishment side of things. Personal responsibility. Kids should be held accountable for the mistakes, not Non-rebellious accidents. I mean, we're holding them responsible for that too, but this is what we're talking about directly right now. So the kid knocks over the lamp. What do we do? Okay. Clean it up if it's safe. Okay, that's one component of it. You've made a mess. Don't leave it for somebody else. You are active in doing this. You're going to correct this part of it. Can we tell our 3-year-old, you're going to pay for the lamp? No. Number one, they don't have the financial means. Number two, it doesn't mean anything to them. Can you tell your 14-year-old you're going to pay for the lamp? Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you know, that stereo you wanted to get, the new download for music, whatever, that's going to have to be put on hold because you got to pay for the lamp first. Learn to accept responsibility and what restitution is for other people's property. So that's a good thing to foster in the kids. And then understand the concepts of labor, money, property value, and personal responsibility. So this idea of personal responsibility for their actions is a good thing to foster. Foolishness or open rebellion. Common goal of the parents is to take up the foolishness that is bound up in a child's heart and replace it with wisdom. Biblical parenting is directive, proactive, and moral in its aim. Okay, so forms of rebellion that we want to quash and replace with the right kind of behavior. Talking back, refusing the correction, willful defiance, or rejecting authority. These are all bad things. And there's active rebellion, and then there's passive rebellion. I've got on there, quote unquote, the look. Have any of your kids ever gave you the look? Okay. What's that? What's the most common look? Eye roll. Okay. I think our kids each did that once. And then they picked their eyes up back off the floor and put them back in their head after Rhonda was done with them. So, all right. Passive, pretending not to hear. How many deaf kids are selectively deaf kids people have? Pleading ignorance to the obvious after being caught. Okay. Well, I didn't know the bat was hard and would hit Jimmy, or would hurt Jimmy, Doing something good or cute to get out of doing what was instructed. Yeah, that's a big one because that's a hard thing sometimes for parents. Did you clean your room? No, I didn't, but I, vacuumed the living room for you. Okay. That's a tough one because kids might be trying to help, but it also might be, I don't want to clean my room. I'm going to do something else. Again, they're doing something nice, it seems, something constructive, but what are they also doing? They're taking authority over the situation. And also the I forgot. I think I had that on a loop when I was a kid growing up, just kept playing back. Other subtle forms of rebellion, sulking, pouting, whining. If you ignore these, you're only reinforcing that some type of rebellion will be tolerated. Now it's just up to the kid to find the right button to push. Okay, and that's a big one because these things that the kids do, well, I'll do it, but I'm not going to like it, Okay, technically they're doing it, but they've got a frown on their face. They're giving you the death stare while they're doing it. You can't tolerate that either. Determining fair consequences. There's some factors to consider in that. One is the frequency of the offense, the age or the maturity of the child, the context of the moment, and the overall characterization of the behavior. So that's a lot of things on your plate to try to sift through with your kids, but it's important that we do it. Generally, foolishness falls into 3 categories. Minor infractions that call for a verbal correction. Just, hey, quit touching that, we're in a store, that kind of thing. Infractions that need some action and which call for more than a verbal reprimand, something that punishment has to be handed down, and offenses that require the full weight of the law. So it's kind of a scale with our kids, with what their actions towards you, their actions toward others. Verbal admonishment, warning is needed. It does not diminish the need for first-time obedience. So verbal admonishment might be fair given the situation, might be needed, but if you're constantly having the kid, no, I told you to do that. No, I told you to do that. shouldn't be put up with very long. First time offenses. If it's not out of character to good behavior, you know, that's the first time he used a hammer to hit his brother. Okay. Obviously there's something to be, you know, thought of on that. But a lot of times kids try stuff out. They're always trying to push the boundaries to see what's going on. And well, he's never done that before. Well, maybe he's just trying it out. Maybe he's seeking attention. Maybe he's just trying to see if he can get away with it. Be fair. Don't expect perfection. Communicate to the child that you do expect excellence. Okay. All right. I think it's about that time. We'll go ahead and close that off there. Thank you for everybody's participation today.